Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Iconic with me, Danny Pellegrino. I'm so excited. I have the author of Spoiler Alert, The Hero Dies, which is a new movie that is fantastic. I weeped through it. Michael Ausiello. Michael, how are you?
Well, how are you?
Good. Okay, so I'm gonna probably freak you out right now, but I have to tell you this. So my boyfriend and I, we live together now, but ever since we started dating,
Yeah, you and your boyfriend live together?
we do. That's not the freak out part, but we'll get there. Sit tight, little bear. So I followed your work forever on Entertainment Weekly and all of TV Line. And very early on in our relationship, when I would suggest to watch something, I would always use a lot of your suggestions. And then it became this running joke in our relationship of like, oh, does I would say something, let's watch this tonight. And my boyfriend would say, oh, does Michael Sicilio say that that's what you should watch because he got the last name wrong?
Of course you did. Yeah.
And so it really is still, this has been a decade going where my boyfriend will say this all the time. And I told him today, I was like, oh, I'm interviewing Michael Sicilio today about this book and this movie. And we couldn't believe it. But you're such a looming presence in our household and our relationship. So thank you.
It sounds like your boyfriend, though, was a little resentful of me
Yeah.
and my influence on your television choices.
100%, Michael. He is, because every time he recommends something, I'll say no. And then I recommend something, and he knows that it probably came from you.
Wow. So we have like a little love triangle happening here.
Yeah. Yeah. One that you are just finding out about now. But yes, it's a very looming present. So I'm so excited to talk about this movie. I loved the book when it came out. And so I also just think that we're missing these sort of weepy movies. And I know it's a real life story. So that must be an odd disconnect. But I love like a Terms of Endearment or something that I can get to the theater and have a cry over. So how's it feel now to see your life turned into this story?
Unreal. It still feels unreal. As I sit here and I speak to you about the movie based on my book, it does not feel real. Uh, it just, I feel so much gratitude to have gotten this far in the process. I never imagined my book would be a movie. And even when we were discussing it being a movie, I never imagined it being a movie, mostly because it's so hard to get a film made, particularly a film made this quickly after a book comes out. Although, it feels like the stars aligned, everything clicked into place. And I'm just extremely grateful to be proud of the finished product.
So, were you watching scenes along the way, or did you sit down and watch the whole thing for one time? And if so, what was that like? Or when were you able to like sort of let the whole thing wash all over you?
Well, I was there every day of filming, so I saw the entire thing um, being made. The first time I saw the movie, it was Michael Showalter's director's cut. So it was a fully assembled movie. It's not like I was in the editing room watching it, being pieced together. I was, I let Michael have his space. We all let Michael have his space to create, his cut. And then he invited me over to his home. I believe it was in February, last February, which is just a couple months after we wrapped shooting. And I sat in his living room and I watched it on his television while he was downstairs in the basement. And I was, again, extremely grateful, but also super relieved.
Mm.
Also,
Hmm.
as much as as much as I trust Michael Showalter and Jim Parsons and all my creative partners in this endeavor, you really never know at the end of the day what you're gonna end up with.
Yeah. I want to switch gears a little bit and then we'll get back to the movie. But because I mentioned you're such a large looming presence in our household, I wanted to know, I wanted to throw some things out at you and just see if you would recommend it.
Right?
And you don't necessarily have to have seen these, but would you recommend them? Lindsay Lohan's new movie on Netflix, Falling for Christmas.
I've not seen it. Highly recommend.
White Lotus season 2.
Have seen it. Highly, highly recommend.
Alf on Peacock.
Saw it when I was young. Have not seen it since. Highly recommend.
The Real Houses of Salt Lake City.
Haven't seen it. Um, Not going to recommend it.
Well, American Idol with the current judges.
Haven't seen it. Uh, sure, if you like American Idol, I don't have any horse in that race. Whatever you decide.
The View.
I like The View. I haven't seen it in a while, but I'm a big Joy Behar fan. I recommend it.
Me too, Michael. Me too. What would be your top sort of shows of all time? A handful, couple that come to mind as like the pinnacle of TV.
Santa Barbara.
Interesting.
You don't even know what that is, probably.
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
you don't know what it is. What is it?
Was it a soap opera with Billy Crystal, or what am I thinking of?
The worst. I'm siding with your boyfriend now. It's a soap opera, you're right, but it's not Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal was in a sitcom called Soap.
Okay, okay. Well, I'm doing my best. I mixed them up.
Santa Barbara, it was a soap opera in the 80s that was on NBC. It aired as part of the Days of Our Lives, Another World Santa Barbara block, but it's an amazing television show, and it made me want to work in television because it was the anti soap opera in so many ways. It like played with the form in amazing and interesting ways, and it inspired me to want to work in this business. But let me throw a couple more out at you that you probably are more familiar with. Twin Peaks, the original Twin Peaks, not the Twin Peaks: The Return, which I was not a fan of. Roseanne was probably one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. That was my sense of humor, that sort of sarcasm, and
I rewatch the Halloween episodes every year of the original run of Roseanne. I have like the old school DVD which has the collection of Halloween episodes, and they're the best.
Yeah, it makes me sad because it obviously the Roseanne sort of tainted, or politics and everything have sort of tainted my memory a little bit of it. But I still love that show, and to me, it never really got the praise that it deserved.
Right. And it was also so progressive for its time. I mean, even rewatching a lot of it, it just feels ahead of its time.
That's what's so disappointing about it. It was so progressive. It was so forward thinking. And then for the show to come back and for her to not be that person, and to align herself with someone who was not progressive and not open-minded or forward thinking, it really bummed me out.
Yeah. Are you correct me if I'm wrong, are you a Comeback fan with Lisa Kudrow?
Comeback.
Yeah, my favorite show of all time. I love it.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's the most brilliant thing ever.
I'm surprised we haven't seen a third season yet. Like, I feel like that's coming.
I hope so. I feel like Lisa's been acknowledging it more lately. There was just this list of like best HBO performances or shows or something.
Yeah, on tvline.com, my website. We made that list, and she reposted our blurb on the comeback on her page. Of course, though, left out the TV line and didn't include a link, but it's fine. It's fine. We were happy that she was excited that we included her.
Yeah, I feel like she's prepping us for a season 3, and I pray that we are getting that, because just every year or every time something happens in the news, I'm like, I need to see Valerie Cherish tackle this. Like, even with Twitter sort of crumbling in front of our eyes, I'm thinking like, what happens to Valerie Cherish's Twitter account and her plugging her movies? I need to know.
Are you and your boyfriend on the same page with the comeback?
With the comeback, we are. Yeah, I think I like it more than him just because I'm so obsessed, but he will rewatch it with me.
And what's the one show that you disagree about the most?
He likes a lot of murder mystery stuff, and I just can't. It's too heavy for me, so I don't watch a lot of I don't know, he'll watch like Oxygen, Snapped, and those kinds of shows, and I'm not interested in those. Or he likes anything kind of like with a darker edge, and I'm just wanting to rewatch the comeback. I like the cringe comedy. I also love Pen 15, which is one that we were able to connect on. I thought that was brilliant. And Yeah. Yeah. In terms of movies, what do you think? What do you like in terms of movies? Do you have a top couple of movies that are your North Star?
Terms of Endearment is definitely in the top five. Beautiful Thing, one of my favorite gay movies, LGBTQ movies of all time. Um, When Harry Met Sally, of course.
Michael, it's so special that we're getting this movie, spoiler alert, because speaking of gay movies, we don't often get this kind of thing, which I don't know what the budget was, but it certainly doesn't look cheap. It looks like such a well-made big budget movie, and yet it's in that sort of terms of endearment genre. And I just think it's really special. I would have never imagined that we would have gotten something like this when I was a kid. And so, I thank you for that. It's cool. It's exciting.
That's really nice of you to say. To even have the movie mentioned in the same breath as Terms of Endearment is an absolute incredible honor.
There was one moment, and I wanted to ask you about it. It really broke me. It was at the end of the movie. And of course, the movie's called Spoiler Alert. So this isn't too much of a spoiler, but there's a line of Sally Fields where she says sweetie pie, and just the word sweetie pie, that phrase just broke me open in a way that I was not expecting. It was a lot. And to have Sally Fields in your movie must just be the most amazing thing.
It still doesn't seem real. I ran into her in the elevator yesterday because she's, participating in this press junket. And I was like, oh my God, it's Sally Field. Like I knew she was going to be here, but still seeing her, it's just like, my brain cannot process it.
Do you have a favorite Sally performance?
Um, I have so many favorite Sally performances. I'm trying to think which one do I want to highlight.
I just rewatched Eye for an Eye recently. Did you ever see that with Kiefer Sutherland?
Never did. Is she in it?
Yeah, she's in it. Yeah, it's crazy, but it's good. It's like very much like a elevated Lifetime movie.
I mean, Steel Magnolias, Soap Dish. I love when she does comedy. I like when she blends the two, which is what she does brilliantly in this movie. I also like the more sort of straight dramas like Absence of Malice, which I recently saw again, and she's just brilliant in it.
Right. This movie deals a lot with grief, and I'm very fascinated by the topic of grief and how people handle the loss of someone. And I wonder if you have any advice for people who might be going through the loss of a loved one right now. What advice would you have for them?
Read my book. Practice self-care. Take care of yourself. That was something that was a struggle for me to remember to do while Kit was sick, and then after he died, was to just be kind to myself and find things that bring me joy and bring me happiness, and don't lean too heavily into the survivor's guilt aspect of it, which is something I struggled with then and I still struggle with today.
Yeah, I think it's important to be easy on yourself when you're going through a time like that. The thing that sort of fascinates me the most is just how you lose someone close to you, and then it's almost like you're supposed to do this pomp and circumstance of a funeral or something, and then because you did that, okay, you're supposed to move on and be done with that. And I think grief is so much messier than that.
Yeah, I grew up I've experienced a fair amount of loss in my life, so I am very familiar with the pomp and circumstances that you were reference. I went through it with both my mother and my father, and yes, I find that the hard part is when all of that noise dies down and when things get quiet, and when I think people assume that you've moved on when in reality you're far from moving on.
Right. Was there anything with this movie and the translation from book to movie that you really fought for, that it was important to you that they had on screen, whether it be a little tiny moment or something like your Smurf obsession, which is portrayed on screen? Like, was there anything that the powers that be maybe were getting rid of that you said, no, we need to have this?
Um, for the most part, I mean, there were never any fights. That's for sure. But there are definitely aspects of the story that I felt strongly belonged in the story. And I thought it was important to not shy away from the messiness of my relationship with Kit.
Mhm.
I think there's a tendency, especially stories that have a tragic ending, to sugarcoat uh, um, uh, things, whether it be relationships or individuals. And I was an imperfect person. I am an imperfect person. Kit was imperfect. Our relationship was absolutely imperfect. Um, I don't shy away from those things in the book, and I didn't want the movie to do that either.
And I thought it handled it so beautifully. I agree. I was sort of expecting, I think the audience is almost expecting the relationship to unfold in that picture perfect way. I think also because it is a big budget gay movie and it's so rare for us to get something like that, that I almost was expecting the relationship on screen to play out as if it was like everything was completely hunky dory. And
Yeah.
I was so grateful, and I thought it added such another layer to this movie. I mean, I just love the movie so much. I loved it.
I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, I mean, I love a fairy tale. And I honestly think in its own way, this movie is a fairy tale. But it's not the traditional fairy tale.
Right. Michael, what are you working on now? I mean, I want to encourage everyone to check out your website, TV Line, also the book. If you haven't read it, it's just so incredibly beautiful and fabulous. But anything you can share with us that you're working on next?
Well, I mean, I'm just focused on this movie and promoting this movie. Beyond that, I will say this experience um, scratched an itch in me. Um, I want to tell more stories. I have more stories to tell. How that manifests itself, I don't know yet. Um, and I think it's something that I'll really start to take a close look at when I get sort of past this experience. But I definitely feel like I have more stories to tell.
Well, I want to wrap this up by asking you two questions that I ask all of my guests. The first is, if you were choosing for People Magazine, Sexiest Man Alive, who would you choose? And your favorite Mariah Carey song?
Um, Idris Elba, Sexiest Man Alive. Favorite Mariah Carey song? Not a big Mariah Carey fan.
How dare you, Michael? You have to pick one.
Christmas is You.
There you go. That works.
Yeah.
Um, Michael, thank you so much for opening up your life in your book, spoiler alert. And I personally have to thank you because I've followed your work for years and years and years. And I have always been such a fan of your writing and your recommendations and your love of pop culture. I think that's what really I felt so connected with you when I found you all those years ago on the wild, wild web. But I appreciate it because seeing you so passionate about pop culture made me feel seen, and it made me feel like I wasn't alone. So thank you.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. Please apologize to your boyfriend on my behalf and assure him that I'm going to now step away.
Wait, what should we watch this weekend so I could tell him that you told us?
I'm going to step away.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys know now. I've caused enough trouble. Getting out of the way.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael Ausiello or Michael Ausiello. Thank you so much for your time and congrats on the movie.
Thank you so much. Take care.